Secret Origins #1, written by, I'll get to it as I cover each story, because this is an anthology book that has 3 different origins for the New 52 versions of heroes and villains. This issue we have Superman, Dick Grayson Robin, and Supergirl. So, starting off with the Superman story, written by Greg Pak, art by Lee Weeks. We open up with a narration from Lara, Kal-El's mother, I'll say, and basically saying, like, your dad's a great man, your dad's a brave man, but, you know, he discovered the planet was dying and he kind of freaked out. He's a scientist, I'm a soldier, and that I'm going to give you my strength. And she's like cradling her son, and it's obvious this is the last day of Krypton, and she's basically given the whole thing of like saying, yeah, we're going to send you to Earth. We're going to hope that you're going to survive there. I mean, you'll survive. You're going to be like a god down there, but like, we hope that you're going to find someone who can care for you and love you the same way that we love you. And I have no reason to believe that's going to happen, but I'm hopeful for it. And she kisses him as she puts him in the rocket ship, and they send him off. And her narration continues onwards after that throughout the issue. But as we see Krypton explode and the ship land on Earth, it's now interspersed with Martha's narration, who's saying very similar things, saying like, oh, your dad's a good man, John Kent, he's the best man I've ever known and whatnot. And as they're driving away from the crash site with little baby Clark, it's just like, who put a baby in a rocket? Is the Russians? Like, what's going on here? And she kisses his forehead, tastes salt, and realizes like, oh, someone else was crying over this baby. That's their tears I taste. And so she like takes hold of its little hand, and Clark grabs hold of her finger and then just snaps her fingertip, like breaks the bone. And she screams out. She's just like, ah, geez. And John like swerves the truck like, what happened? He's like, nothing, don't worry about it. It's all good. And she looks down at Clark and realizes like he's showing empathy despite the fact that he's clearly a newborn. And she's like, no, there's no way that you actually feel bad for doing that. That's so weird. So then John is just like, okay, when we get back, we'll call the sheriff. We'll see if like what we can do with the baby. And immediately Martha's like, no, we're not going to do any of that. Look, I know you're a good man. I get that you will walk like 20 miles to return change if you get too much, but like, we're keeping this baby. I don't care how many laws we break. And she's like, fine, all right, yeah, whatever. So, you know, he starts developing, he starts showing off super strength, heat vision, whatnot. And throughout the entire time, like, they were surprised, but they were never worried. They were never like taken aback and like told, you know, oh, don't do that, or make him feel ashamed of his powers. So then one day bullies are fighting him, and Martha just shoos him off with a broom. And Clark says like, oh, I didn't fight him because Dad said never to punch down. And she's like, yep, that's why I'm here. Gladly beat up a bunch of kids with a broom. And then, of course, the Kents die, and the narration over top is from Martha saying, like, one day we're not going to be there, and I hope that you don't just sit alone filled with, like, grief and anger or whatnot. I hope that you remember how loved you are, not just by myself, but whoever left you for us. And we then get the scene of Superman stopping the train for the kid who's, like, wearing his cape, and we see him come up to the kid, and the kid's like, hey, mister, what does the S stand for? And then we see Jimmy and Lois there with the cameras, and then Superman saying, it stands for Superman. So that's that. It's nice. It's a nice little one-shot. It gets your emotions flowing for his 2 mother characters. I'd say it's probably like a solid 7. And I will say, all these stories being shorter than normal, it's really going to have to do a lot to get higher than that. Like, to get into the 8-9 territory with a smaller page count, it's got to be something real special. Anyway, next up, Dick Grayson Robin. We have written by Kyle Higgins and art by Doug Mahnke. We're at Amusement Mile. Dick Grayson is with his parents, and they're just, you know, enjoying the day or whatnot. And Mom's just like, okay, all right, you hung out with us for like 4 hours. If you need to go meet up with your friends, we get it. And Dick's like, awesome, thanks, Mom and Dad. So he runs off to meet up with his friends. His dad stops him, though, and she's like, whoa, hey, your mom's birthday is tomorrow. Did you remember to get her a gift? And he's like, don't worry about it, Dad. And he's like, okay, what'd you get her? And he's like, don't worry about it, it's a surprise. So he runs off, and we see that the gift is a little bracelet with 2, like, robins on it, because that's his mother's favorite bird. And she's admiring it. She's like, oh, we really do have like a fantastic son. He's just the best, isn't he? And Dick is sitting outside of the trailer and is hearing him talk about him. And he's just like, yeah, pretty good. And then he overhears somebody shaking down Mr. Haley of the circus saying, pay up if you don't want no accidents to happen. And Haley's like, bro, we are a circus. We do not make a lot of money. There's nothing I can even give you, even if I wanted to. He's like, oh, well, that's unfortunate. So then that night, of course, the Flying Graysons stop flying and they fall down, and Dick leaves with the bracelet in his hand. He heads to the Wayne Care Center. Bruce Wayne steps in. He's just like, hey, do you remember me? He's like, yeah, you're at the circus. You're Bruce Wayne. What's up? And he's just like, I just want to know if there's anything I can do for you. And Dick's like, oh, there's only one thing I want. So we see 2 weeks have passed. Dick's jumping on rooftops and whatnot. He hasn't met Batman or anything, but he's hunting down known associates of Tony Zuko because the cops believe that Tony is behind it, but nobody can find him. So at this point, he goes in, he starts beating up some gangsters best he can, but he's like 12. So at that, he gets a gun pulled on him, and then that's when Batman swoops in, and Batman brings Dick to the cave, and he's like, look, Dick says, like, I know you were following me. I know you're looking for Zuko, but more importantly, like, you're keeping me safe as I'm doing this. And he's just like, yeah, all right, whatever. Anyway, and he shows him a map and says, here's all the locations of people who have worked with Zuko. We can go get them if you want, and he'll be able to bring down people like Falcone and Maroni and all that. However, I'm more worried about you. And he takes off his cowl, reveals himself to be Bruce Wayne, and Dick's like, oh, well, geez, that's okay, sure, whatever. So Bruce says, let me help you. Let me help you get what you need. And so we see the training montage of him becoming more, to start over, to change. And it's been 1 whole year now. Not yet. We see him drawing costumes, and nothing is striking his inspiration. He's just like, I don't know, these all seem stupid. I need something that's like me, And he looks over into a tree, and he sees a pair of robins, and he's like, and then Bruce points out, like, oh, in some cultures, the robin is a sign of rebirth. Maybe that's exactly what you need. So we see him in the robin costume, beating up Joker and Harley, and then we get it's been 1 year, and he's looking over his mother's bracelet. And he's talking to Alfred, and Alfred's like, what would you like to do? And Dick's like, I don't know. Like, Bruce goes out to his parents' grave, but that doesn't seem like me. That's not a thing that I feel is right. And so Alfred's like, okay, well, how about instead of mourning their death, you celebrate their life? Like, do something that is going to make you happy for them, Like, that you were around them at all. And he realizes, like, okay, yeah, I get it. And he goes out to Amusement Mile again. He hops onto a roller coaster, and we see him enjoying the day, thinking about his parents as 2 robins fly by. So that's nice. Honestly, I think it's a perfectly well-told story. Don't have any issues with that. I'd give that one a 7.5 as well. So last up, we got Supergirl, written by Tony Bedard, art by Paulo Siqueira. And we're on Krypton. We see that a bunch of young Kryptonian girls are left in the Scarlet Forest to prepare for their trials, and they come across a giant-ass bird dinosaur thing called a Fireclaw. And these 2 girls run up there just like, oh, well, I want proof that we got this close to a real Fireclaw. But then it noticed them, and it starts charging after them, and just like, oh, crap, we're going to die. And that's when Kara jumps in. She's got, like, some sort of mallet thing with electricity in it. She just whacks it over the head, and she's like, it's not going to do anything, but I had to do something. I saw these girls like sneaking away from the rest of the group, and I just had to follow them. Deep down, it's what I know I needed to do. So the Fireclaw is now trained on her. It's about to attack, and then a couple of robots come in, and they're just like, oh, they've truants detected, threat sedated. And they go to the 2 girls who left, and there's like 2-point deduction because you guys left the group. And Kara tries defending them, being like, no, they just got accidentally separated. And they point at Kara and be like, 4-point deduction. And he's like, wait, hold on, what? Why did I get more? And then we see her driving through the skies with her mom, and it turns out her mom explains the trials are the most important part of discovering who you are in Kryptonian culture. And the fact that they left from their assigned thing is why they got 2 points. But the fact that Kara tried to cover for them instead of letting them be their own people, that's what got them the extra like 4 points, And Kara's like, that's stupid. I saved them. Doesn't that count for anything? And her mom basically explains, like, look, every action has consequences, even good ones. And those are the sort of things that you need to learn to live with. Like, no good deed goes unpunished, you know? But I'm happy that you did it because you are upholding the honor of the House of L, and that's important. So we get the rundown of, the House of L. Her father and uncle are both scientists. Her mother and aunt are both, like, police officers / soldiers. And as they discovered Krypton was going to get destroyed, Jor-El was like, yeah, no, I'm building a rocket ship, sending my son away. Meanwhile, Zor-El, her father, tried doing a bunch of different, like, genetic stuff, trying to essentially genetically modify Kara to be able to survive that stuff. We see he also built a bunch of other, like, monsters called world killers. And he's like, well, the monsters were a failure. I'm just going to jettison them away. Screw that. And also, none of my genetic stuff on my daughter actually did anything. I also tried making her, like, super enhanced armor, including an armor that was made out of, like, a Brainiac AI, but, like, nope, no good. So the only thing I'm going to be able to do to save her is the same thing that my brother is doing, which is put her in a rocket ship and send her to Earth. That's all we can hope for. So he sedates her. He puts her there. Meanwhile, his wife comes in, discovers all the things he's doing because he's in a secret lab. He's not making this stuff well known. And she ends up shooting him because, he experimented on their daughter and, like, was going to just send her away without anything else. So, however, the rocket's already set. She leaves the planet. Something happens where she arrives much later. She's fully charged, and we see she comes out guns a-blazing. So then we say a few months have passed. She's starting to learn the way that the world works, and a North Korean satellite with 2 astronauts in it, something starts going wrong. And they call back down to Mission Command trying to, like, solve it, but they're about to burn up in entry. So Supergirl comes in, saves it. She x-rays the thing to see the 2 astronauts in. She heat visions off the part that they're in and then brings it back down to Earth. She follows the radio waves between the craft and the ground to figure out exactly where it needs to land, and she just sets it down in North Korea. And then she opens up the hatch to let the astronauts out, and she's like, don't worry, you're safe now. And then, of course, because it's North Korea, they just start opening fire on Supergirl. She heat visions the bullets away, and the Korean guy is like, you're trespassing, you westernist tool, this is an act of war. But she can't understand any of it because she didn't speak Korean, so she just flies off. And she's like, all right, well, like my mom said, no good deed goes unpunished, I guess. I just hope that my cousin doesn't find out. And Superman swoops in right then and is just like, you did what in North Korea? You got to think a little bit, Kara. You can't just swoop into North Korea. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry. Was I just supposed to let those astronauts die? And thankfully, Superman doesn't say maybe. But yeah, he's like, you just need to think. You need to understand the consequences. She's like, I'm learning as fast as I can, but you got to trust me to find my own way. So she flies off and leaves Superman behind saying, like, yep, this world's weird, but I can deal with the consequences. That one, maybe it's just because we covered Supergirl's origins so in-depth in her own book, but, like, I don't know. It felt like there wasn't a lot to be told there, and they're just kind of throwing in some weird extra stuff. So I'm going to say that one's probably more like a 6.5 for me. It's not bad. It's just not comparatively to the other two that have, like, a real emotional punch, So yeah, Secret Origins. We'll see what the next 3 is in the next issue.